Good afternoon and welcome to our fifth and final Task Force Campus Conversation. I'm Rose Martinelli and I'm the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, and I'm so pleased to be here to help steward the process of our financial sustainability task forces. Today we are going to focus on the academic portfolio. This is a very large and central initiative for the university, and I'm pleased to be joined by Leonie Huddy, Professor and Chair of the Department of Political Science, and Axel Drees, who is Distinguished Professor and Chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy. They're going to spend a lot of time today helping to share a little bit about the journey that they have been going through the last 3 months, trying to understand the challenges and opportunities within the academic portfolio as we seek to try to strengthen what we do and make it easier for us to be entrepreneurial and innovative within the academic portfolio. Before we begin, I want to also let you know that we're going to save time to address your questions. So as we go throughout the session, please use the Q&A function on the webinar to submit your questions, and we'll do our best to get at everything as we go along. So what is financial sustainability anyway? It really is a core baseline requirement for any financial institution to remain sufficiently viable in the long term. But what is the strategic budget initiative here at the university? It's not about downsizing or reducing staff or cutting faculty. It's just not about that. But fundamentally, it's a collaborative initiative designed to create opportunities to become more effective, more financially viable in the future by looking at areas to reduce costs, improve our revenues, and improve how we work together. So it's not just about a budget reduction approach. It really is about the task force co-chairs asking each of us to think about how we can improve the work that we do, how to make this a better place to work and to be more productive every day that we work together. This is not a strategic planning process. There will be time for that in the coming months and years as we go forward, but this is foundationally an important step for us to understand where we are, how we can be stronger, and how we can work much more collaboratively together to really create one Stony Brook University. So as we begin our session today, I'd like to spend just a moment to talk about how we're structured and where we are in the process of the Strategic Budget Initiative. As you can see from this slide, there are 5 task forces that have been working collectively together over the last 3 months, really investigating opportunities for creative work and for strengthening the synergies amongst us as we do our work together. We report up to the Financial Sustainability Committee, which is a group that's comprised of the co-chairs and a number of other faculty and staff members. Together we work collectively to think about how all these working groups come together, where there are shared opportunities and where there are oftentimes kind of overlays, where a certain activity is really cutting across all of the task forces. And so we're helping to guide that and also to ensure effective communication amongst the task forces. We are a recommending body. So I want to say that again. We are recommending. We're doing all this analysis and all this work together, but we are recommending areas of opportunities up to senior leadership for their input and guidance. Once they approve those things, they bring that back to the Financial Sustainability Committee and then back into the task forces. So where are we in this process? It's been 3 amazing months. I joined on October 1st, and we have spent so much time really defining the scope and understanding what is the current state. We had dozens and dozens of subject matter experts come and talk to each of the task forces to help us to understand what is possible. The academic portfolio group brought in so much data from our institutional research arm to really look at our own internal productivity and look at the history of where we've been and where are the opportunities going forward. And so just recently, we finished up with what we call our opportunity identification in step 2. And we are now fully in step 3, having formed our task forces and our working groups to work on very specific initiatives. Again, all this information will be coming back into the task forces and then back up to financial sustainability and ultimately through executive leadership. And we will wind up our work at the end of April, beginning to identify which of these areas we'll begin to implement beginning this summer. So it's a very exciting and daunting process. There are hundreds of faculty, staff, and administrators engaged in this process, and I hope that you will continue to remain engaged with us as we begin our session today. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Axel, one of our co-chairs. Axel, please.
Thank you, Rose. It's going to be my pleasure, together with Leonie Huddy, to present today the Academic Portfolio Task Force and to answer any questions from the audience. So please submit your questions. Also, the material that we'll show today will be posted on the Financial Sustainability webpage, so you can go back there and look at in more detail and with more time. So like all task forces, the Academic Portfolio Task Force looks to identify additional resources that will help to sustain and advance the mission of the university. Each group is looking at different aspects of the university, and our group in particular is looking at all the academic programs, the academic portfolio. And I hadn't known in advance how daunting of a task that was going to be, but what we discovered is there are 11 schools involved, schools and colleges that run 270 plus degree granting programs administered through about 100 individual subunits. There are 75 undergraduate majors, 40 minors that service about 17,000 undergraduate students. These students aren't equally distributed, of course, over all the colleges, and in fact, the College of Arts and Sciences has the vast majority of these programs. We have 50 doctoral programs that have somewhat over 3,000 students in them. And really, these doctoral programs are the backbone of our scholarly activity and the research mission of the university. We also have 80 some master's programs that service almost 5,000 students. Again, these are not distributed equally across all colleges. In fact, most of them are in the health sciences. There are some certificate programs that service a subset of our own graduate students at this point. We also have a suite of non-degree granting and continuing education programs. We're still in the process to fully understand the breadth and scope of that. So what are we actually doing with the academic portfolio? That is, in a way, laid out by the scope that was given to our group. And I'll paraphrase that somewhat. So we've started a discussion with the academic units on the size, capacity, scope of their programs, with a particular emphasis on identifying opportunities where, in a creative and responsible way, tuition revenue can be increased to sort of provide additional resources. And this needs to be done in a way that maintains the excellence of the research mission and the scholarly activity of the university and provides our students with the educational programs they are seeking at Stony Brook and the opportunities they are seeking at Stony Brook. Now, to make that a little bit more specific, on this next slide in the center, we're showing a Venn diagram that represents the three areas that all the task forces are looking at. That is growth of revenue, streamlining of processes, and cost reduction. So those are the three areas each group is looking at. They overlap, and we talk about the overlap areas as key enablers to help us sort of move forward. Now, for our group, we're focusing in particular on the revenue growth part. That's sort of by far the thing we've discussed the most. And we've identified 3 areas in particular where we think there are opportunities. And these areas we're now in the validation and analysis step sort of looking at in more depth. And those are listed here. They're expanding continuing and professional education, where we believe the university has a smaller footprint right now than it could have. Expanding master's programs, in particular in schools and colleges where there are not that many master's programs right now. And also new interdisciplinary and innovative undergraduate programs that may help us to maintain our out-of-student base and possibly grow that. Together with that, in terms of process improvement, what we're looking at, it turns out it's very cumbersome to get programs developed and approved. It's a multi-year process, which does not help sort of incentivizing faculty to develop new programs. So that's one area. Cost reduction is really not the focus of our group. And we made deliberately decision that we do not want to look at identifying programs that can be cut or eliminated. Nonetheless, there are some cost reductions that might be possible. For example, through process improvements, streamlining, one can reduce the administrative burden on faculty, and that frees up time that can be devoted elsewhere. Also, we're looking at removing some redundancies. For example, duplication of courses in various units, and with a better coordination and communication between units, that can also free up resources. So one of the things that really excites me about what we're doing and have been doing over the past months is sort of the breadth of people also involved in this process. So the Academic Portfolio Task Force and the related working groups have more than 50 members representing all the schools and colleges that operate academic programs. Most of the members are actually faculty members, many of them in leadership positions, and many of those in leadership positions at the departmental level, so very close to the actual academic portfolio. There's also a strong group of staff involved in this from key areas relevant to the academic portfolio. So on this next slide, I'm showing you the list of the membership of the task force, who is all involved. And I'm sure that all of you, or at least most of you, will identify someone in this list that they either know or know of. And that really represents sort of the breadth of people, opinions, outreach that is involved in what we're doing. And with that, I will hand it off to Leonie, who will tell you more about what we have learned and where we're heading.
Thank you, Axel. Much appreciated. And I just want to say from the outset that one of the reasons I'm involved in this, and it has been a lot of work, is because I want to see Stony Brook get to a better place. I don't want to see us decline. Axel mentioned we're not cutting. We are not cutting. I want to see us grow. And I think it's extremely important for all of us to believe firmly that in the future we are going to be a stronger, scholarly, research-based and creative group. And to do that, we need more faculty. I mean, that's the plain truth. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm sure Axel feels much the same way. So one of the great things about our task force is that we do have individuals from all of our different schools and colleges, and it's been a pleasure to get to know them and to see the depth of commitment. I think those of us who work at Stony Brook know, for whatever reason, we're really committed to the institution. We grumble, we complain, but we're there to help it get better. And so in our conversations, we talked to individuals in each of the schools and colleges. We learned more about their programs. And what's interesting, we had a lot of presentations, we talked to deans. What's really interesting is some common themes did emerge, some similar problems that we hadn't always realized we'd been experiencing in our different areas of the university. And I want to reinforce this idea. Our first focus is thinking about these programs. What do we have? And as we think about not cutting but growing, where are there opportunities and what are we missing at the moment? And so Axel mentioned that we believe that we're missing programs, a fleet of programs in this domain of professional, continuing education, non-degree programs that are currently being offered to some extent through SPD, but we really think when we compare to peer institutions that we could raise more money doing this. Now, of course, we have to think about how we do that, but it's an area that we've identified as a real potential for Stony Brook, and we can see that our peers are doing it, and we need to look at that. Another area, as Axel noted, is that we think that we have room for growth in our professional master's programs. In both areas, what I like about building in these areas is that we know that our students face a difficult task getting employment. We know that. It's not going to be an easy landscape. If we can develop our professional master's programs, what's good about that is that we can do things like the accelerated BA/MA programs where we can give them skills. Same with continuing education. We can stay in touch. We can give them more as they go forward. So those are areas where we see for growth in our programs. To get there, we also see some other problems that we have to fix in order to build and strengthen and grow these programs. One is the current tuition sharing model. We hear a lot of complaining, a lot of grumbling, concerns about broken promises, and it just felt so obvious to us. When Axel and I got together, I think the very first thing we talked about was how do we fix tuition sharing? How do we get this right? And why do we want to do that? I mean, we're not asking to give units all of that money, but it helps to provide some incentive for people to think, okay, let's have a go at this, let's try something new. It can foster innovation. So that's one area that we see as ready and ripe for some fixing. Second, that Axel mentioned, is our program approval process. It's cumbersome. We are making headway with SUNY, which has been a bit of a problem in the past with dense information, difficult forms. We seem to be making some progress there, but we have internal issues. Our different governance curriculum committees sometimes are focusing on the wrong things. They should really be focused on the intellectual content of these programs, but instead they get bogged down looking at SUNY technical review issues, and that seems like it's duplicating effort. It's a waste of time, and things go round and round in circles, and it takes forever to get a program approved. That's not a good thing if we want to grow new and exciting programs and do that in a timely fashion. We just can't do that. And the last piece is the sense that we are not doing enough to strengthen our existing programs, especially in the realm of master's programs and the current professional master's programs and other programs that we have. We need some help there. We need help with marketing, we need help with recruiting, we need help with tracking alumni. So these are some of the things that we've identified. And again, I want to underscore, it's not about cutting, it's how we get stronger, how we grow more programs, how we can do this moving forward so that we can be the better institution that we want to be. So as we think about those problems, we've also started to talk about what some of the fixes are. We've mentioned the continuing and professional education. As we've talked about that, there are also other possibilities. We've been dreaming. Rose said to us, dream a little bit. And so we have dreamed occasionally, and we've looked at other places. Maybe they're not exactly the right places, but in other places you can see, for example, that we could be doing more for our local community with non-credit courses, something for interest. It makes us a better local neighbor. It means that we're doing more for our local population, and this is a good thing. So we can see many ways in which we can provide more, not quickly, slowly, surely, over time, but leveraging a start point and seeing if we can get there. So that's on the program side, and I'll come back to the working groups that are working on this. But to get there, as we said, we have some procedural issues. One is to fix the tuition sharing. Hard at work at that right now. I don't know that we have the answers right now, but I think what's important is to get something back to the units providing and working hard to increase their revenue streams. But I think it's also really important to make sure that money flows back so that we can hire new faculty. Departments may not be able to do that on their own, but so that money needs to also flow back and spread across campus, because it's not clear that we can all do exactly the same amount in this respect. So there has to be some balanced perspective on these new revenues as they come in. A second procedural issue is cleaning up and trying to streamline the program approval process. One thing that we've talked about, and it's sort of being discussed in concrete terms in the Provost's office, is to develop something called a program incubator. This would take some of the more promising proposals, look at them closely, assess market demand, and then provide some resources to help grow those programs to begin this journey of changing, revamping, innovating. And that's a work in the Provost's office. So that is underway. We've had good discussions about that. The third procedural point is streamlining the program approval process. As we've said, things have already improved with SUNY. We're making headway. We were considered the bad poster child in all of the SUNY schools. Our proposals, for whatever reason, were not that great, and they were looked on rather unfavorably, but that's improving. But we're also looking to see what we can do to streamline our internal approval process, to make that more effective, less bouncing around. Let's get a flow chart going and see if we can streamline that. And then the last piece of this is to speak with marketing, to think about, can we recommend, what do we need? I mean, we sort of know what we need. The question is, what do we need centralized that can help us? And I think we're thinking hard about that too. How can we provide centralized services that means that you as a chair, faculty member, are not running around trying to market your own programs, not quite knowing what you're doing, not really having the resources to do that well. And we have these existing programs, we may as well sell them well, advertise them well. So those are the opportunities that we have zeroed in on out of many, many, many things that we could have come up with. These seem to us some key start points for what we are doing. And so, having said that, we have also crafted some working groups. We've put together working groups to look at these key issues. The first is looking at professional and continuing education. That's being co-chaired by Sarah Jourdain from European Languages and Karen Mendelsohn from School of Health Technology and Management. We have a group hard at work looking at the tuition revenue sharing process, Samir Das and Sadia Hickman, Samir from Computer Science, Sadia from Health Technology and Management, and a smaller group looking at this combined package of how to improve the development and launch of new programs. So we have a couple of slides just showing you who's working on these groups, and I will underscore that one of their key considerations is to make sure that we do this in a smart, sensible, doable way, that we don't overtax each other, that we don't try and do things that are just simply impossible. We need feasibility here. So you can take a look at this. You'll see there's quite a lot of faculty on the professional continuing non-degree program working group, strong group, people with experience. And we also have the assistance of some outside experts really doing some comparisons with peer institutions, market analysis, trends, to see what's possible at Stony Brook. The second group is the tuition sharing group, somewhat smaller, involving some administrators and staff involved with budgeting, plus faculty, to try and get this right. This is not going to be easy. No one has any illusions about this, but I think it will be really beneficial if we can trickle some of that money back to departments and units, send a signal, this is activity that we're encouraging, and you get some discretionary funds out of this that won't be taken away, but they're yours to use. So that's where we're going, that's what we've been doing, and with that I'll turn it back to Rose.
Leonie and Axel, thank you so much. There's been so much going on, and I appreciate you providing such a thorough overview. Before we go into Q&A, I want to spend just a few minutes and provide you with an overview of the results from the survey that we conducted in December. We had more than 2,200 respondents submit a full survey, and we're really, really pleased with the results. You can see here on the bottom left quadrant a little bit about the response rates. We had huge response from our tenure and tenure track faculty members, but overall, very strong representation and participation. And more than 500 people submitted detailed comments. And so we're working through and reading those comments right now. I think looking at the survey, I walked away feeling very, very, very positive about this community. When we closed the survey asking questions about the readiness for change. And more than 2/3 said, while it might be difficult for my unit to make changes, I feel strongly that I can make those changes. And that also 2/3 felt that they had confidence in the leadership to be able to bring us through these challenging times in ways that will position us to be a much more strong institution going forward. So we learned a lot. We'll be posting the survey results next week on our website. So I hope that you'll visit the website to learn a little bit more. So with that said, let's begin to jump into some questions today. So, buckle up, here we go. All right. What is the purpose of the academic portfolio dashboards? Will they be accessible to the Stony Brook University community? Axel, I'll go with you first.
Okay, I can take that one. So the academic portfolio dashboards is something that we developed together with institutional research to put together some data, sort of high-level data that gives sort of some metrics, some quantitative assessment of academic programs, including revenue and cost, to sort of facilitate a more rational discussion about the size, scope, capacity of programs. And that information, we're still in the development phase, but it will be made available to department chairs and unit leaders.
Thank you very much. So when you were looking and developing this, Axel and Leonie, you guys said we have to have this. We have to have a look within the departments. Were there any surprises?
Were there surprises?
I mean, it was really interesting. We asked institutional research to profile first the colleges and schools. We just wanted to see, for example, what enrollments looked like over time. We took a 10-year snapshot to see where there's been growth and decline. So it was interesting to look across our undergraduate, graduate programs. We also asked Braden to look at what units are spending, what are the costs? And I think we understand that there are challenges. The university is not an even place. Yeah. Costs, enrollments, they vary across different departments and groups. But within that, I think, as a chair, it is useful for me to see what my peers are doing in different departments. I want to know, how are we going? Is my program doing well by comparison? What can I do to try and increase enrollments if I think that's possible? So I thought that the sheer comparison was useful. Just knowing what was happening, let's say in the social sciences where I am, how do we stack up? And understanding those differences. There will always be differences, but I think it would help to say, can I reallocate resources a little bit? Am I putting these in the right places? Can I take someone and shift them over to a master's program, for example? So I'm hoping that this will foster decision-making at the chair's level, that it'll empower them to look at their own resources, see what they're doing well, not so well, and where adjustments can be made.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I think it'll be very, very helpful. So what opportunities do you see in professional, continuing, and lifelong learning non-degree programs? Leonie.
I mean, I'm, as I mentioned before, I'm really excited about this because I feel the challenges that our students face. Now, I think we're still not clear. This work, I mentioned the working group, it's undergoing. There's a lot of investigation going on right now, and it's going to take a couple of months to sort this out. But personally, I can see, for example, encouraging faculty, perhaps we can have a weekend workshop to give someone a workplace credential, a skill, a new skill that they need. Even encourage some of our PhD students to potentially get involved in these kinds of activities, delivering skills to our students who are out there working. So I think that the scope of this is emerging. I certainly see that on the health sciences side, we understand that there is mandatory continuing education that's required. right? And when we talked to the deans in the health sciences, it was really interesting. There was a consensus that we're really maybe not doing enough, or that we could be doing more, and that we could be charging more, which was equally exciting, that apparently we weren't not always charging market rates. So if we can rationalize how we determine this kind of tuition, figure out what kind of money can come in, I think there's real potential right out of the gate without us doing a great deal to get this started.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think about our location on Long Island. We are the dominant public here with so many types of programs, and we can serve the entire island more effectively. And I think about all the, what I would call lifelong learning programs, in lectures and all the assets that we have here in our intellectual capital. It's just going to be amazing here. So great idea. Yes.
Yes. So I thought that actually this was one of the really eye-opening things for me to see how much demand there is for continuing education, and that Stony Brook is ideally located to fulfill that, and we're not having sort of the footprint in that we could have.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting opportunity for us, and I think we're well poised. We have so much of the infrastructure here that we can leverage, so it's pretty exciting. Here's the question. SUNY has always been a barrier to the inception and installation of new programs. Is SUNY on board with streamlining this process? So I'm going to take this one off right out the gate. We have been working closely. I know the Provost's office has been working very closely with SUNY on this. And we just learned through some announcements from the governor and also from SUNY that there is a real desire to be a partner with the universities to help to streamline and innovate in this area. And so I feel like we've got real strong possibilities. Where I think, and where I've heard from you all, is that we have the great opportunity to streamline our own shared governance process and to make that really clear. And so I'm super excited that Elizabeth Newman will be able to help spearhead some of that work with us and the Provost office as we get going. But I wanted to answer that one because this one is just so wonderful that SUNY recognizes that they have been a barrier and they can be our partner. And so this is a real exciting change for us. So, this one's a big one. Faculty are already overworked. Isn't this just adding more pressure and more work on the shoulders of already burdened faculty members? I'm gonna let you both come at this, but Axel, why don't you begin?
Okay, I mean that is of course an obvious concern that faculty we all have the sense that we're kind of stretched thin and already doing so much, and that's where I think it's really important that any growth in the future needs to be done in a sensible way, which means that it does not tax research and education of students. And I think that's exactly the spirit of what we're discussing, that we're looking for additional resources to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So a part of the resources that are generated will flow back into maintaining and managing these programs.
Well, that's very helpful. Leonie, you want to?
And I think, there is a note about continuing education that's somehow a lesser activity, but I don't think that's the case. I think that we really want to deliver a good product that people are proud of. So if we move into this area, I think we need to keep focused on that. But I would second what Axel is saying, that we need to start slowly. Mentioned that we need to move carefully. I think we can do some things simply by strengthening our existing programs. This won't tax faculty too much, depends on the amount of growth, but I think I can see ways in some of my programs we can increase the students, bring in some more money, just doing what we're already doing. And so I think, again, we're all in this together. We have to come up with something, right? And if we don't, the last thing we want is cuts. We just don't want to go there. So the only way to see our way out of this is to think of ways to bring in new revenue. And I think, as I said, we have a very committed group of faculty. at Stony Brook who care about the institution. I would want to make sure that our junior faculty are not overburdened. Assistant professors need to be protected. But, our assistant senior professors, we can, put in a little bit more work and think about this. Do it smart.
I think it's really important. I think also, as we're looking at this, we also want to improve some of the burdens and the inefficiency in our systems. We are so much in our way. And so much of our work identified the same barriers that are being solved by other parts and task forces. But somehow we have to be effective and collaborate towards getting to a better financial footing. And I think it's going to be some very creative and sequenced ideas that help us to make these steps gradually. And hopefully people will volunteer to want to step in to help us do some of this.
Because I think
that's my hope.
Yeah, because I think it's, our task force is looking not at tomorrow, but at some medium, maybe there are a few things tomorrow, but medium, longer term.
Yeah.
And we have to think, I think the sequencing, leveraging, moving slowly but surely in that direction is the only way we can do that.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. Many of these ideas require significant marketing resources. Where are all of these marketing resources coming from? Really good ideas. So I'm gonna toss this over to Leonie first, but this is one of the things that we know is that we are highly decentralized in the university, and so each kind of tub is on boat is on its own bottom in many ways, and we've got little nickels all over the place, but we haven't really developed a strategic approach to how we market our programs collectively together. We have a wonderful marketing and communications area that is just making huge strides. And I know I've been working with Eric in the graduate school and David in undergraduate enrollment, and we're all thinking about how do we collectively think about, in many ways, raising Stony Brook up, and so that people know more about what we're doing. And so there's going to be a lot of collective stuff. But I know this is a big topic that you and I have talked a lot about, Leonie, so I'm going to toss it over to you.
I think that at the unit level, we're willing to help with this effort, right? But we need a plan. That's right. What I think is missing. I individually scramble around, find someone to do some things on our website, whatever. I'd like to know if I'm doing the right things. Right. And so I'm willing to put effort into this because I think it's a bonus to our units. They get out there, the word gets out there in different ways. But we need something centralized to give us some guidance. Yeah. So I think it's a partnership. I don't know, sure, money might have to be spent somewhere, but I think we can do a lot with our existing resources if we can develop a good framework for this. Get training, get some guidance, and get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. How does the work of this task force relate to the Future of Work initiative? Axel.
Okay, so that's an interesting question, and I think these efforts are really complementary in a way. So we're really focusing on finding opportunities, identifying obstacles, and addressing that. We're not focusing on particular content of individual academic programs. Despite the breadth that our group has, it doesn't have the breadth to actually tackle that. And I think that's where the Future of Work Task Force, that is mostly the deans, comes in. They have sort of a broader outreach down into the academic units to sort of identify interesting ideas for specific programs, undergraduate programs that are interdisciplinary, forward-looking. So they're really complementary efforts.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Our group has been focused so much on the frameworks and solving kind of for the barriers and challenges. And the provost really launched this group to be thinking about how do we create more of these interdisciplinary programs that we don't even have the constructs to figure out how to launch them, because we typically stay within college or school. So I think it's a very important initiative, and we're helping to build those frameworks that will help to support these launches of these programs in the future. Really interesting work. And I've been straddling both and enjoying looking at how these are intersecting in the future. Leonie, why are the Provost Deans not involved in this task force?
I'm sure they will be involved at a future time point, but right now I think we've been charged with going down to the ground level, stimulating ideas, getting from the ground level the perspective of the problems that people confront in developing new programs. What are the obstacles? And that's been a really great exercise because we have surprisingly converged on a number of these key themes. So I am sure, it's not our job. We're brainstorming. We're going to generate ideas, and we'll present those back to leadership team. And I'm sure the deans will be involved in that point at making decisions. But it's been, I'd say, an interesting and very refreshing process to be given this task of talking to each other among faculty, among chairs, to just brainstorm in this way. So I think that I think the combination will work well. I think that they will be involved later on.
Yeah, and I think we actually did engage many of the deans early on,
That's true,
and absolutely the provost is engaged in the executive leadership of this group. So there's actually a lot of engagement, maybe not formally as members of the task force.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, I think we needed to have the what I would call the doers, the people who are experiencing the opportunities and challenges within departmental leadership and so forth to kind of lead the charge. Where are the problems? And so I think it's been refreshing to hear from that level of leadership, academic leadership.
So actually, while deans aren't necessarily members of the task force, although some are, or working groups, there's actually a strong representative of the various deans' offices on the task force.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Thanks for reminding us. All right. Will programs be eliminated to create room for new academic programs? And it's related to this question is also, are you and your task force responsible for determining academic programs? And so I'm going to start with Leonie on this one.
I think, we decided early on that was not our job. That was just way too difficult to think, I don't know what people should be doing in different places. So I think those decisions about what comes and goes, what can be strengthened, needs to be decided more at the ground level. So our job has really been to focus in on making it easier to develop new programs, to be innovative. That's really been our focus. Yeah. I don't think that it really is our purview to decide what programs to be developed. We're just trying to make it easier for that innovation to bubble up from the ground level where people have interesting thoughts, know what they can do. And I think that decision-making is really effective if it comes up organically.
I think that's exactly right. And we're still, I'll just keep saying this, we are the Strategic Budget Initiative. So it's a budgeting. So we're thinking about new revenues, cost cutting, new program, efficiencies and so forth. We're not setting the strategic course of the university. That really has to happen from our leadership, our academic leadership across the institution. So we're complementary. We're setting the foundation for how we will change in the future. But ultimately, those decisions will be made by the faculty and the academic leadership. All right. Okay, the long question. Total undergraduate enrollment at Stony Brook is set at the highest level of the university. Won't establishing new areas take students from other units? Or is Stony Brook University planning to increase the total number of undergraduate students? Okay, I'm going to start this one. So I'm helping to oversee enrollment at this time with our interim provost. At the undergraduate level, we are not planning to grow. We can't. We are truly at the maximum number of students compositionally. That might change in the proportion of international students or non-resident students or New York residents. That's a function of interest in our programs. Where we do have opportunities to grow are at the graduate degree programs or non-degree programs. So you're right. If we open lots of new undergraduate programs, it is a swapping of people. It's a zero-sum game at this point, at this time. Now, as we think about the future, we'll come revisit this with input from the entire community. But again, no plans for increasing the size of the undergraduate student body. This is a great question. What is the ideal balance of paying master's degree students and PhD students in a graduate program? What are the ideas, evidence on optimal cohort size? Oh boy, that's a big one. Axel, I'm going to let you start with that one.
Okay, let me read that question again.
That's a big question. On optimal paying versus non-paying students, I think is the first piece of it.
I think that there is not an one-fits-all answer to this.
Exactly.
And there are some areas, some departments where the master's programs are kind of separate from the PhD programs. They have very little overlap. So then it's kind of two separate questions. There are other areas, like in my department, where most of the master students we have are aspirational PhD students, so there's a lot of overlap. So I think this needs to be balanced at each individual department level. With the cohort size, that's another interesting question. Some of our PhD programs are very small, and there might be an advantage of having additional master students to create this more sizable cohort. So I think there are many aspects and ways to look at this, and there's not sort of one optimum, one versus the other.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And we have professional master's degrees. We have professional doctoral degrees, not just PhD programs. So it's very different discipline by discipline. And I think we haven't studied this at length at this point. I know that was one area that we wanted to get at, but I do believe this is an important question, because ultimately, in the survey that we just conducted, the number 2 area of highest priority was recruiting and the strongest PhD students to Stony Brook University. And so we also have to be thinking about how much we're supporting our students' progression to degree, and not just kind of financial mixes. So it's all taken together, but that was the number 2. Number 1 was we want to be recognized as the leading research institution, and number 2, attract the strongest PhD students. So interesting pieces there. All right, both interdisciplinary programs and elimination of redundant courses pose issues about the distribution of revenue to the units affected. What are the plans for addressing these issues? I'm going to give it to Leonie right now.
Oh, we haven't mentioned our work on interdisciplinary programs, but they are built into, for example, the tuition sharing group. There has been concern that a unit that teaches, it's not the home of that program, teaches, doesn't get much in the way, or doesn't get as much in the way of tuition sharing. And so it's a challenge. We need, if we're going to build these interdisciplinary master's programs, we've got a few issues that we have to work out. Is there a home department? Who's getting the money? Who's getting the credit? And that is part of our discussion. I mean, the 2 working groups, the professional education and tuition sharing, have to work this out, because if we hope to foster this, right now we do have some problems. So I think stay tuned is a good answer to that one. We hope to fix it. Yeah. We hope to fix that on the interdisciplinary side.
Axel, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so in a way, one of the things that we recognized is that the incentive structures we have in place kind of encourage to silo. And as Leonie said, we don't have a solution for that problem, but that is one of the things that the revenue sharing incentive working group we hope will will come up with a proposal how to address that.
Yeah, and I think the design of the incubator as well is to help to figure out how do we parse credit sharing and courses and tuition revenue, because interdisciplinary programs could have 3 or 4 schools, not just 1 or 2. So, I mean, there's lots of things going on that need to be worked out. We're trying to put up the frameworks for how we work them out. The other thing about revenue share, the duplicative courses, is it's the first awareness.
Right.
I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're like, oh my gosh, they're almost the exact same thing. Should we do that? Is that creating confusion for our students? Not necessarily for anybody else. So I think that's a big issue that we need to think about. All right. Can you elaborate on how interdisciplinary programs could enhance revenue? How do we describe new interdisciplinary programs in ways that appeal to students? I'm going to take this one on for just a moment. So we have 2 levels of types of programs. We have undergraduate and graduate programs. If we think about many of our undergraduate programs, they are more discipline-oriented and not necessarily connected to the future of work, which is what the provost has been focusing on. And their flagship universities have similar programs at perhaps the same price and the same quality. And so attracting students across the nation to Stony Brook, we would love to see some level of interdisciplinary courses that are future of work or grand challenges, experiential, project-based, to really take advantage of the unique academic assets we have if you think about all of them collectively combined. We want the best New York residents. We want the best international students. We want the best students from across the nation. And we have those things. So how do we create those programs going forward? Then at the professional level, it's this future of work. It is, what are the academic pathways to careers? And oftentimes they are much more diverse than they have been in the past. So I'm getting off my soapbox. I'm going to go back to Axel. Sorry. That's one of my spots.
So I think interdisciplinary in itself is not necessarily a value. But there are many areas where Stony Brook has strength that are interdisciplinary, and we don't really have programs that map into that. So for example, data science is something that is percolating up in almost every academic area, right? So that's something. Or the environment, where we have the school, SOMAS, School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, where questions are, in business, health, they're very broad questions. And I think the idea here is, with the future of work, to tap into that and to design programs around those questions.
Yeah.
So it's not being interdisciplinary as its own purpose.
That's really helpful.
And can I say something there, Rosa? I mean, I think we also have a bunch of master's programs, different parts of the university, that we can take their existing courses and put them together in slightly different ways. I mean, this, in thinking talking to some colleagues, like, oh, yes, I'll take your course, my course, this course, and we could actually expand the number of students in those and put it together to create a different interdisciplinary degree course. Yeah. So that struck me, that we have the ingredients for different combinations.
Absolutely. And it's not interdisciplinary as a thing. It's really about what are we trying to do and how are we trying to really address some of these bigger issues and challenges. All right. How do we grow Masters and Masters of Science programs responsibly with respect to student access, loans, and student debt? Great question. Leonie.
We try to get them jobs at the end of it. We give them skills that they can use in the workforce. Again, if we look across the university, you start digging more deeply into some of our master's programs, some of them are really good job getters. And I really think that it is, in fact, responsible for us to offer these programs to our students so that they not only get their Stony Brook undergraduate degree, but we give them, let's say, an extra year of something that takes them from floundering to actually having a work track. So I think any wise student would ask, and this is why I want to make sure we can track our alumni to find out where they are, so that I can tell a student, listen, this is the kind of job, this is the kind of money you'll make, So you make your decision about loans. Is it a worthwhile investment? But we need to be able to tell them that and give them that information. And I'll feel pretty good about that at the end of the day if I know that I got them a job and that gave them some skills that they could use.
Absolutely. And our program incubators talking about market fit, labor market demand, competitors, and so forth. That'll be really helpful as well. All right. Last question. I think you're going to both get this one. Do you see any low-hanging fruit or easy fixes? Axel.
So we mentioned one easy fix, which is the development and approval process of programs, which we discussed, we identified, we kind of handed off to the provost office, and they took the ball and are running with that. In terms of revenue sharing, to revitalize that, that's a more complex problem, but there is sort of one corner which is a reasonably easy fix, which could potentially be implemented early, and that is provide units that generate revenue that is shared with some small fraction of the shared revenue that they can actually spend irrespectively of what their budget situation is.
Great. Leonie.
And I think look at existing programs, try and get some help in strengthening those right now. I mean, we have them. We haven't had the kind of centralized help that would really, I think, help us market. For example, like knowing who the alumni are out of a program and being able to tell a prospective student, here are all the places where they're working. We don't have that information right now. Makes it harder to promote these programs to our students. So that and trying to promote, I think, our joint BA/MA programs so that we take our current students, say, listen, you're going to get a bit of a deal here. You'll get some free courses by doing an accelerated BA/MA, and keep them around at Stony Brook for another year to give them the skills that they need to get employment.
Great feedback. Thank you both. Leonie, Axel, thank you so much for your leadership. I know this is much more than you thought when you took on and said yes when we called you. So I'm so grateful for your leadership. For the task force members and now the working group members, I want to thank you. You've put in so many hours, and your commitment here has really been astounding and enormously impactful. So thank you for your time. And for all of you who are watching today, thank you for joining us. This is a community endeavor. This is a collaborative process by which we, members of Stony Brook University, can chart the pathway forward. And I'm so grateful that you participated today. And if you sent in questions and we didn't get to them today, we will be updating the FAQs very shortly. If you have an idea, if you have a point of view, please, please, please reach out to Leonie or Axel or myself, or submit a comment through the Financial Sustainability website. We do care. We do listen. And we're doing our very best to create a system of change that is collectively embraced by all of us to bring about times where we can thrive and can build upon the many, many strengths that we have as a university. So thank you so much. Thank you to the two of you. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Good night.